Have you ever wondered if it's time to live alone as an older person? In this video, we're sharing 15 powerful signs that might just tell you it's the right choice. From personal freedom to emotional growth, these signs could change your life. Stick around until the end for a surprising revelation that could make all the difference. You won't want to miss it. Number 1. You've had successful periods of living alone in the past and missed that experience. Let's be real, if you've lived alone before and found it to be one of the most fulfilling, peaceful, or downright exciting times of your life, that's a major clue. Think about it, the quiet mornings where you could sip your coffee without interruptions, the freedom to decorate every single corner just the way you liked, or even the weirdly satisfying thrill of dancing in your kitchen at 2 a.m. because there was no one around to stop you. Sound familiar? When you've had those periods of living alone and genuinely thrived, it leaves a mark. You start to notice how much you enjoyed the independence, the control over your own space, and the opportunity to completely focus on you. It's not just about the absence of others, it's about the presence of yourself. Living solo can feel like a return to your own rhythm, your own vibe. It's a unique kind of comfort, and once you've had it, it can be tough to let it go. Maybe you're looking around your current setup now, whether you've got roommates, family, or even a partner, and you feel this itch. It's subtle, but it's there. The little compromises you have to make, the shared routines that don't quite fit your groove, or just the fact that you can't quite unwind the way you want because someone else's energy is in the room. It's not that you don't care for the people around you, you probably do. But something deep inside might be tugging at you, reminding you of how good it felt when your space was just yours. Now, don't get me wrong. Living alone isn't for everyone, and it's definitely not a magical fix for life's ups and downs. But if you've already experienced it and found it rewarding, that's a strong signal. Maybe you love the challenge of figuring out how to handle everything solo, from fixing that leaky faucet to budgeting for groceries to deciding when and how you'd have people over, if at all. It can feel empowering to know that your home is entirely your domain, where every decision starts and ends with you. For some people, that kind of setup is more than just comfortable, it's grounding. It gives you space to breathe, to think, to grow. And as an older adult, that feeling might become even more precious. It's not about being antisocial or shutting others out, it's about recognizing that you've already thrived in this kind of environment before, and there's no reason you can't do it again. The longing to live alone isn't selfish, it's self-aware. It's about knowing what energizes you, what helps you feel calm, and what kind of space allows you to be the best version of yourself. So if those past experiences keep popping into your mind and making you smile, maybe it's time to give it another shot. Because let's face it, when you've already proven to yourself that you can live alone and love it, why not lean into that? You've done it before, and chances are, you can do it even better now. Number 2, you prefer solitude over companionship. Some people just thrive in their own space, where the only voice they hear is their own inner monologue. If that sounds like you, then maybe the idea of living alone isn't just a passing thought, it's your ideal scenario. You don't dread the quiet, you embrace it. In fact, it's where you feel most like yourself. Think about it, the endless possibilities of a space that's 100% yours. No awkward compromises over decor. No tiptoeing around someone else's schedule. You can eat cereal at 2 a.m., dance like a maniac in the kitchen, or spend an entire weekend engrossed in a book without anyone wondering if something's wrong. For you, solitude isn't loneliness, it's freedom. It's a blank canvas where you paint your days however you like. Now, this isn't about disliking people. You might enjoy company every now and then, but the constant presence of another person? That's a whole different vibe. Even the friendliest extrovert can start to feel a little crowded after a while. You might find yourself craving quiet moments to recharge or just think your own thoughts without interruption. When you live alone, those moments don't need to be scheduled, they're built into your life. There's also something deeply satisfying about being in full control of your environment. Want to play music at full blast? Go for it. Prefer utter silence? That's cool too. Living alone means you set the tone. There's no negotiation about who gets to control the thermostat or whether the TV stays on during dinner. It's your domain, and every decision is yours to make. That sense of autonomy can feel downright magical when you've spent years accommodating others. Of course, some might say that humans are social creatures and we're meant to be around others. And sure, there's truth in that. But not everyone recharges by being around people. For some, socializing feels more like a drain on energy rather than a boost. If you're nodding along, you probably find peace in being able to fully retreat into your own little world. Living alone lets you curate that perfect balance, socialize when you want, but retreat when you need. And let's not forget the small joys of solitude. Waking up to complete stillness, where the only sound is the hum of your thoughts. Cooking for one and not having to cater to anyone else's preferences. Spending an entire day in pajamas just because. These aren't luxuries, they're the rhythm of a life lived for yourself, by yourself. Choosing to live alone isn't about pushing people away. It's about embracing the way you're wired. It's about recognizing that solitude isn't empty, it's full of potential. It's where you can stretch, breathe, and be unapologetically, wonderfully you. If that idea lights you up inside, then living alone might just be the ultimate act of self-care. Number 3, you struggle to compromise in relationships. Let's be real, living with someone, whether it's a partner, a friend, or even family, requires a fair amount of compromise. It's not all sunshine and roses, there are days when their quirks might drive you up the wall. Maybe it's the way they leave dishes in the sink, their preference for blasting music at ungodly hours, or even how they reorganize the kitchen every other week. Whatever it is, cohabitation is a dance, and it takes two people willing to adjust their rhythm for it to work. Now, if you're the kind of person who struggles to find that balance, who feels resentment bubbling up every time you have to budge just a little, you might need to take a step back and consider, is living alone the better option for you? Compromising doesn't mean you're losing or giving up something. It's about meeting halfway, which, for some, sounds easier than it feels. But when compromising becomes a constant tug-of-war, draining your energy or making you feel like you're bending over backward more than you'd like, it's a big clue. Maybe you've reached a point in life where you know what you want and aren't willing to sacrifice it for the sake of peace. And hey, that's okay. Recognizing that is a huge step. It's not selfish, it's self-awareness. Think about it, living alone means calling the shots. Want to binge watch your favorite show till 3 a.m.? Do it. Feel like rearranging the furniture on a whim? Go for it. You don't have to ask for anyone's opinion or worry about whether your choices will inconvenience someone else. That freedom can be incredibly liberating if you're someone who's grown tired of the constant give and take that shared living demands. For older adults, this becomes even more relevant. At this stage in life, you might feel you've done your share of compromising, raising kids, navigating long-term relationships, managing shared spaces with coworkers or extended family. You've lived it. Maybe now, you're craving a space where you're in full control, where every decision is yours to make without negotiation or debate. But let's not sugarcoat it, struggling to compromise doesn't necessarily mean you're difficult or set in your ways. Sometimes, it's just a matter of knowing yourself too well. You know what works for you and what doesn't. And that clarity? It's a gift. It's also a sign that living solo might be the best way to honor your needs and preferences. Of course, not compromising can also lead to friction if you try to force yourself into shared living situations. Why set yourself up for frustration? If you know you're happier when you don't have to constantly adjust for someone else, then living alone could be the kindest choice, not just for you, but for everyone involved. It allows you to thrive without resentment, to enjoy your space without compromise. And honestly, isn't that the dream? Number 4, you feel drained by social interactions. Let's talk about social interactions. You know, the ones that start off okay but somehow leave you feeling like your energy's been vacuumed out of you. It's not that you don't like people, maybe you even enjoy good conversation, the occasional laugh, or catching up on what's new. But there's a limit. And if you're honest with yourself, that limit is hit more often than not. There's a unique exhaustion that comes from constantly navigating other people's needs, moods, and quirks. You might find yourself stuck in small talk that feels like it's going nowhere, or tiptoeing around someone else's habits just to keep the peace. Even being around someone who doesn't bother you can feel like a lot. Why? Because their presence alone demands a certain level of energy you'd much rather save for yourself. And it's not just the direct interactions, either. It's the unspoken social expectations. That feeling that you should smile more, talk more, or do something you really don't feel like doing just because someone else is there. You catch yourself thinking, wouldn't it be nice if I could just be in my own bubble for a while? That bubble, by the way, doesn't have to mean isolation, it just means having control over when, how, and with whom you spend your time. When you live with other people, even in the best scenarios, your energy can get chipped away bit by bit. Maybe it's the constant hum of activity in the background when all you want is quiet. Or the way someone else's plans accidentally derail your perfectly peaceful day. It's not their fault, and it's not yours, it's just life when you're sharing space. But here's the thing, if you consistently feel more drained than fulfilled by being around others, it might be time to rethink how much social interaction you really need on a daily basis. As an older adult, this feeling can become even more pronounced. Maybe you've reached a point where you're not interested in playing host, roommate, or mediator anymore. You've done that. You've been there. And now, the idea of coming home to a place that's 100% yours, where you set the tone and pace, sounds like heaven. Living alone doesn't mean you're swearing off people forever. It means you're choosing to control the flow of energy in your life. You decide when to invite others into your world and when to keep that door closed for your own peace of mind. And honestly, that's not just okay, it's smart. If you've noticed that social interactions, even with the people you love, leave you feeling worn out instead of energized, pay attention to that. It's a sign that your natural rhythm thrives on solitude. And when you honor that need, you might find that you're happier, calmer, and far more in tune with yourself. Because, let's face it, nothing beats the kind of recharge you get when you're truly on your own. Number 5. You value complete control over your living space. Let's face it, some people are just born to be the rulers of their own little kingdom. If you're someone who lights up at the thought of having complete say over every single aspect of your home, living alone might be calling your name. It's not about being controlling, it's about creating a space that feels like a true reflection of you. When you live alone, your home becomes a direct extension of your personality. Every decision, big or small, is yours to make, and there's something wildly liberating about that. Think about it, no more debates over whether the couch goes here or there, or whether the walls should be painted in serene blues or bold reds. It's all up to you. If you want to rearrange your furniture on a whim or dedicate an entire room to your hobbies, you can. Want a plant in every corner? Go for it. Prefer a minimalist vibe with nothing but clean lines and open space? That's cool too. Living alone means you don't have to negotiate or compromise your vision. Then there's the practical side of things. The temperature? Exactly how you like it. The music? Your playlist, your volume, your mood. The kitchen? Stocked with the foods you love and organized in a way that makes sense to you. And hey, if you're the type who has a system for everything, Be it organizing books by color or making sure your towels are folded just so you never have to worry about someone disrupting your order. Your space, your rules. Now, let's talk about those little quirks we all have. Maybe you like your home spotless, with not a single thing out of place. Or maybe you're perfectly fine with a bit of organized chaos because, hey, you know where everything is, and that's what matters. Either way, living alone gives you the freedom to be as meticulous or as relaxed as you want. There's no judgment, no one looking over your shoulder, no one expecting you to do things their way. And it's not just about the physical space. It's about the atmosphere. Living alone means you control the vibe. Want to light candles and create a cozy retreat after a long day? Done. Prefer an energetic, lively environment with bright lights and music? That's your call too. Your home can change with your mood, and you don't have to explain or justify it to anyone. Ultimately, valuing complete control over your living space isn't about being inflexible or set in your ways. It's about understanding what makes you feel comfortable, inspired, and at peace. When your home is fully yours, it becomes a sanctuary, a place where you can unwind, recharge, and just be. If that idea makes your heart sing, then living alone might be the perfect fit for you. Number 6. You have difficulty maintaining boundaries in relationships. Let's face it, boundaries are hard. Drawing a line and sticking to it? That's a skill, and not everyone has it down. It can be even trickier when you're sharing your living space. Maybe you've noticed that your personal no often morphs into a hesitant yes when someone pushes just a little too hard. Or perhaps you feel obligated to always be available, to help, to listen, to fix things. If keeping your boundaries intact feels like a losing battle, living with others might not be your best setup. Living with someone, whether it's a roommate, family member, or partner, means constant negotiation. There's this unspoken expectation to accommodate their needs, even if it's at the expense of your own. Sometimes, you might even feel guilty for saying no or choosing yourself. But here's the thing, boundaries aren't selfish, they're essential. They protect your energy, your peace, your sanity. Without them, resentment creeps in, and tension builds like a pot on the stove about to boil over. When you live alone, though, that's where boundaries truly get to shine. There's no one to ask for just a little favor when you're in the middle of unwinding. No one to poke at your sacred quiet time or guilt you into plans you weren't feeling. Your space becomes exactly that, yours. The struggle with maintaining boundaries isn't always about the other person crossing them. Sometimes, it's about you. You might feel an overwhelming urge to people please, even when it costs you. Maybe you've noticed a pattern. You sacrifice your own comfort to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, or because it's just easier than explaining yourself. It might work in the short term, but in the long run, it chips away at your sense of self. When you're older, this becomes even more important. You've reached a stage in life where your time and energy are precious commodities. Why spend them feeling drained, frustrated, or cornered? If setting boundaries hasn't been your strong suit, living alone gives you the breathing room to strengthen that muscle. You get to decide who enters your world and on what terms. And let's be honest, boundaries in shared spaces can get murky fast. Think about it, one person's no big deal is another's pet peeve. You might feel fine about lending a hand here or there, but what happens when it becomes a pattern? Suddenly, you're the go-to person for everything, and the balance is way off. Living alone eliminates those blurred lines. It's your space, your rules, no explanations needed. So, if maintaining boundaries has always felt like an uphill climb, why not simplify things? Living alone means fewer battles, less guilt, and more room for what matters most, your well-being. It's not about shutting people out, it's about creating an environment where you can truly thrive, unapologetically. Number 7. You enjoy your hobbies and routines without interruptions. Let's get into it, your hobbies and routines. These are your little slices of joy, your pockets of peace, the things that make your day yours. Whether it's diving into a book, tinkering with something creative, or sticking to a morning ritual that sets the tone for your whole day, these are sacred. But you know what can ruin them faster than anything? Interruptions. Picture this, you're finally in the zone, doing something that lights you up, and bam, someone barges in with a question, a request, or just their own energy that shifts the vibe completely. It doesn't even have to be intentional. The mere presence of someone else can sometimes pull you out of your flow. And that flow, let's be honest, is what makes your hobbies and routines feel so good in the first place. It's that quiet, uninterrupted stretch of time where you get to fully be yourself, doing what you love without catering to anyone else's needs. If you've ever felt that pang of frustration when your groove gets broken, you're not alone. It's not about being antisocial or avoiding people, it's about cherishing the rhythm of your life. And when you live alone, you get to protect that rhythm like a treasure. No one's asking, "What's for dinner?" in the middle of your favorite show. No one's turning on the TV just as you're starting your meditation. It's just you, your space, and the freedom to lean fully into your passions and routines without compromise. And let's not forget how routines anchor us. They're not just habits, they're rituals. That morning coffee that you sip while gazing out the window? It's not just about caffeine, it's a moment of calm before the world wakes up. The evening walk you take every day. It's not just exercise, it's your chance to think, dream, or decompress. When you live alone, these routines become even more meaningful because they're uninterrupted, unhurried, and entirely yours. Now, when it comes to hobbies, the joy of living alone is that you can indulge them however you like. Feel like spreading out your art supplies across the entire dining table for days on end? Do it. Want to blast music and sing along while cooking your favorite recipe? Go for it. There's no one there to raise an eyebrow, suggest a better way, or accidentally interrupt your creative spark. It's your space, your rules. If you find that interruptions, no matter how small or well-meaning, start to grate on you, it's a sign. A sign that maybe your hobbies and routines are craving a space where they can thrive without interference. Living alone gives you that space. It's a chance to fully honor what you love, to give your days the structure and spontaneity that work for you, and to bask in the quiet joy of doing things your way, on your terms. And honestly, that's the kind of freedom that makes life feel a little more like yours. Number 8. You dislike sharing finances or resources. Let's get real for a second. Sharing finances or resources isn't for everyone. It's not about being stingy or selfish, it's about having control over what you've worked hard for and how you want to use it. Maybe you feel a little itch of frustration every time someone dips into the joint account for something you didn't agree on, or maybe you just like knowing that every penny is exactly where you think it should be. If the idea of financial independence makes you feel calm and steady, living alone could be your sweet spot. Think about the beauty of having complete autonomy over your money. You earn it, you save it, and you spend it, on your terms. There's no debate over whether to splurge on a new gadget or put more into savings. Want to treat yourself to something luxurious? You don't have to justify it to anyone. Prefer to budget strictly and stick to your financial goals? You can do that without anyone urging you to loosen up. Your money, your rules. And honestly, that clarity feels pretty empowering. It's not just about the big stuff either. Little things add up, too. Utilities, groceries, subscriptions. When you're sharing these costs, there's always room for misunderstanding or resentment. Maybe someone uses more electricity than you or insists on buying pricey brands you'd never pick. Even deciding who pays for what can feel like an endless negotiation. Living alone eliminates that. You know exactly where every bill comes from, who's responsible. Spoiler, it's you, and how much everything costs. There's a clean, straightforward simplicity to it. And let's not forget resources like space and stuff. Sharing can be tough when you're someone who values having ownership over your things. Maybe you don't like the idea of someone borrowing your favorite chair or leaving clutter in the one room you just cleaned. Or perhaps you're particular about how your groceries are stocked or how long the shower gets used. Living alone means you don't have to deal with those little annoyances that can snowball into big frustrations. Everything is yours, and it stays exactly the way you like it. It's not about being unwilling to compromise, it's about knowing when compromise just isn't worth the hassle. Some people are more comfortable when everything is in their control, and there's nothing wrong with that. You get to prioritize what matters to you, whether it's financial stability, personal comfort, or just peace of mind. At the end of the day, living alone offers a kind of freedom that can feel priceless. You don't have to worry about anyone else's spending habits, preferences, or quirks. Your home becomes a space where your resources work for you, not for anyone else. If the idea of never having to split a bill or share your favorite snack again feels like a dream come true, then living alone might just be the perfect setup for you. Number 9. You feel more productive and at peace when alone. Some people thrive in a bustling, social environment, while others, they come alive when the world quiets down, and it's just them and their thoughts. If you've ever felt that surge of clarity and calm when you're alone, no interruptions, no distractions, no one tapping on your mental shoulder, it's a good sign that living alone might be your ideal setup. There's something magical about solitude. It's like a mental reset button. When it's just you, there's no need to filter your energy, no pressure to adjust to someone else's mood or schedule. You get to focus entirely on what matters most to you, whether that's working on a project, diving into a hobby, or simply enjoying a moment of stillness. That kind of freedom? It's priceless. Now, let's talk productivity. You've probably noticed that shared living can come with a constant hum of activity, TVs blaring, conversations drifting in from another room, someone asking if you've seen the scissors again. It's not always chaos, but even small interruptions can pull you out of your zone. When you're alone, though, you set the rhythm. Need complete silence? Done. Prefer a little background music? Go for it. Want to tackle your to-do list at 2 a.m. in your pajamas? No one's there to question you. Peace is another thing entirely. Living alone means creating a space that feels like an extension of you, your energy, your vibe, your sanctuary. There's no negotiation over where the furniture goes, no arguments about whose turn it is to take out the trash. You can decorate however you want, leave things exactly where you like them, and build routines that flow naturally. It's your home, and it operates on your terms. But let's not forget the emotional side of this. Being alone doesn't mean being lonely, it means having the time to connect with yourself. In shared spaces, there's often an unspoken expectation to engage. Even if it's just casual small talk or hanging out in the same room, it takes a little piece of your energy. When you're alone, you don't have to put on any masks or play any roles. You can just be. As an older adult, this kind of peace and productivity might feel more important than ever. You've spent years navigating relationships, careers, and responsibilities. Now, you might find that being alone is when you feel most like yourself. And that's a beautiful thing. So, if you find yourself getting lost in the bliss of your own company, if you feel sharper, calmer, and more centered when you're on your own, it's worth considering whether living alone is the right path. It's not about shutting the world out. It's about creating a space where you can flourish, recharge, and truly embrace the life you want. Number 10. You find it challenging to adapt to others' habits or quirks. Let's be honest, sharing space with other people means sharing everything. Their habits, their quirks, their rhythms. And if you're reading this, chances are, you've started to notice that adapting to those things doesn't come as easily as it used to, or maybe it never did. Either way, it's not a bad thing. It just means you might be better suited for a setup where the only habits you have to deal with are your own. Living with others is a constant dance of compromise. Maybe they're an early riser who clatters around the kitchen at dawn while you're savoring those last precious minutes of sleep. Or maybe they leave cabinets open, hum while brushing their teeth, or, ugh, the dreaded loud chewer. Whatever it is, the little things that other people do, even if they're harmless, can start to feel not so harmless when they interrupt your flow. The thing about quirks is that they're rarely one-off events. They're recurring. And no matter how much you love someone, even the most endearing quirks can start to chip away at your patience. It's not that you're difficult or hard to please, it's just that, over time, these constant adjustments to accommodate someone else's way of being can wear you out. It's like trying to fit your perfectly shaped puzzle piece into a spot where it doesn't quite belong. And then there's the flip side, your own habits. You've got your ways, your routines, your preferences, and maybe you're not interested in toning them down or tweaking them to avoid annoying someone else. You shouldn't have to feel guilty for the way you live in your own home. Maybe you like to watch TV with the volume a little too high or eat dinner at weird hours. Or maybe you're someone who needs everything just so clean, quiet, organized. Living with others can feel like a constant negotiation, and frankly, you might be done negotiating. When you live alone, all that tension vanishes. There's no debate over whether the thermostat is too high or who left the lights on. There's no passive-aggressive battle over whose turn it is to do the dishes. Your space becomes a reflection of you, your preferences, your style, your quirks. You can exist exactly as you are, no adjustments necessary. And here's the thing, recognizing that you find it hard to adapt to others' habits isn't a flaw. It's self-awareness. It's knowing that you thrive when you don't have to constantly navigate someone else's rhythms. Living alone isn't about escaping other people, it's about creating a life that feels peaceful and manageable for you. If adapting to someone else's quirks feels more like a chore than a challenge you're willing to take on, it's a sign. A big one. Because at the end of the day, life is too short to spend it walking on eggshells, or tripping over someone else's. Number 11, you have unresolved conflicts with close family members. Let's talk about family, wonderful, complicated, and, let's be honest, sometimes downright exhausting. If you've got unresolved conflicts with close family members, living alone might feel like the reset button you didn't even know you needed. When emotions run high and tensions are bubbling just beneath the surface, sharing a living space can feel like walking through a minefield. Every glance, every comment, every little interaction becomes a potential spark for something bigger. And who wants to live like that? Here's the thing, unresolved issues have a way of sneaking into every corner of your life when you're around the people involved. You might start second-guessing yourself, tiptoeing around certain topics, or feeling like you're stuck in an endless cycle of emotional push and pull. It's draining. And when you're older, your peace of mind becomes so much more valuable. Living alone gives you the chance to step away from all that noise, to create a space where you're not constantly reminded of what's unsettled. This isn't about running away from problems. It's about giving yourself room to breathe. Sometimes, distance can be the healthiest choice, especially when conflicts feel too tangled to resolve easily. You need time to think, to process, and maybe even to heal. Sharing a home with someone you're at odds with can make that nearly impossible. Every day becomes a balancing act of avoidance or confrontation, and honestly, who has the energy for that? When you live alone, you get to set the tone for your days. Your space becomes your sanctuary, free of tension, awkward silences, or passive-aggressive energy. You can focus on what makes you happy without feeling like you're constantly navigating someone else's moods or expectations. It's a chance to reclaim your emotional well-being, to surround yourself with calm instead of chaos. And let's not ignore the practical side of things. Conflict can make even the simplest shared tasks feel unbearable. Whether it's deciding who pays for what, how to handle household chores, or even just who gets the last cup of coffee, unresolved issues can turn everyday moments into battles. When you live alone, there's no one to argue with over the thermostat, the TV remote, or the grocery list. It's just you, your choices, and a whole lot less stress. Choosing to live alone doesn't mean you're giving up on your relationships. In fact, it might help them. Sometimes, stepping back and creating boundaries is exactly what's needed to rebuild those connections in a healthier way. It's hard to work through conflicts when you're constantly bumping into each other, physically and emotionally. Space can provide clarity, giving both you and your family time to reflect and reset. If the idea of waking up without a knot in your stomach or ending the day without a heavy sigh of frustration sounds appealing, then maybe it's time to consider your own place. Living alone isn't about isolation, it's about protecting your peace and finding your balance. And who knows? That space could be the first step toward healing those relationships on your own terms. Number 12, you've experienced repeated patterns of toxic relationships. Let's talk about patterns. Sometimes, life has a way of nudging us into the same situations over and over until we finally stop and ask ourselves, why does this keep happening? Toxic relationships, in particular, can be like a broken record, familiar, draining, and tough to escape. If you've noticed a cycle where conflict, control, or emotional strain seem to follow you, it might be time to consider a reset. And that reset? It could look like living alone. When you're tangled up in unhealthy dynamics, even subtly toxic ones, it's hard to see the bigger picture. The constant give and take, and let's be real, it's usually more take, can leave you feeling exhausted, unbalanced, and unsure of your own boundaries. Maybe you've tried fixing things or setting limits, but the same patterns creep back in. It's not always easy to untangle yourself from those relationships, but stepping into your own space? That's one way to break free. Living alone offers something that's often missing in toxic environments: clarity. It's like stepping out of a storm into still air. No arguments about who's right or wrong. No guilt tripping. No second-guessing every word you say or every decision you make. You're free to create an environment where your voice, your needs, and your well-being take center stage. Here's the thing about toxic relationships: they don't just hurt in the moment. They leave behind echoes. Maybe you start questioning your own worth or doubting your instincts. Or maybe you've gotten so used to putting others first that you don't even remember what it feels like to prioritize yourself. Living alone can be the antidote to that. It gives you space to heal, to reconnect with who you are when you're not bending to someone else's expectations. And let's not forget the peace that comes with it. Toxic relationships thrive on drama, big or small. It might be constant tension or little passive-aggressive digs, but either way, it's noise that chips away at your sense of calm. Living solo? It's like hitting the mute button. You decide what energy enters your space, and you can finally exhale without waiting for the next storm to roll in. Of course, this isn't about blaming yourself for the patterns you've experienced. Sometimes, life just hands us difficult relationships, and we learn as we go. But if those patterns keep repeating, maybe the lesson is this: you deserve better. You deserve a space that feels safe, uplifting, and entirely your own. Living alone doesn't mean shutting yourself off from the world or giving up on relationships. It means stepping back to protect your peace, rediscover your inner strength, and build a life that reflects what you truly want. If repeated toxic patterns have been weighing you down, consider this your sign to break the cycle. Alone doesn't mean lonely, it can mean free, empowered, and whole. Number 13. You value independence over emotional support. Let's talk about independence. It's not just about doing things on your own, it's about feeling in control of your life, your space, and your decisions. If you're someone who values independence more than the constant emotional support that can come with living with others, it's a sign. A big one. Living alone might just be your perfect match. Some people crave the companionship that comes with sharing a home. They thrive on knowing someone's always there to talk, to share the ups and downs, to simply be. And that's great for them. But if you're not wired that way, you might find that constant presence a little smothering. It's not that you don't care about others or don't appreciate connection. It's just that you'd rather call the shots without having to factor in someone else's emotional needs 24/7. Maybe you've reached a point in your life where you don't need someone to be there for every emotional high and low. You've learned to navigate those waters yourself, and honestly, you prefer it that way. There's a unique kind of strength in knowing you can face challenges solo, without leaning too much on anyone else. You've built that resilience, and you're proud of it. Living alone amplifies that independence. You get to handle things your way, on your timeline, without anyone looking over your shoulder or trying to help when you didn't ask for it. Now, let's flip this around for a second. Living with others often means sharing your emotional bandwidth, too. It's not just about them supporting you, it's about you supporting them. Sometimes it's subtle, a listening ear, a comforting word. Other times, it's more intense. And while that can be rewarding, it can also be draining, especially if you're someone who values your independence more than the give and take of constant emotional connection. When you live alone, you're free to choose when and how you engage with others emotionally. You can have deep conversations with friends, spend time with family, or connect in ways that feel meaningful, without it being an everyday obligation. You get to save your emotional energy for the moments that truly matter, instead of feeling like you're always on call. And independence isn't just about emotional space, it's about practical freedom, too. Living alone means you don't have to justify your decisions, big or small. Want to rearrange the furniture at 2 a.m.? Go for it. Feel like spending an entire weekend in your pajamas without talking to a single soul? Who's stopping you? Your life, your rules. There's something undeniably liberating about that. If you're the kind of person who thrives on self-reliance, who feels more at peace when you don't have to balance someone else's emotions with your own, living alone is more than just an option, it's a lifestyle that fits you. It's not about shutting people out, it's about creating a life where you get to show up for yourself first, in the ways that matter most. Number 14, you're unwilling to compromise on lifestyle preferences, like sleep or diet. Some people just know what works for them, and honestly, there's no shame in that. If you've dialed in your perfect routine and aren't keen on anyone else disrupting it, living alone might be the best way to keep your sanity intact. Whether it's your sleep schedule, eating habits, or daily rituals, these aren't just preferences for you, they're non-negotiables. And sharing a home with someone who doesn't align with your vibe? That can feel like trying to solve a puzzle with pieces that just don't fit. Let's start with sleep. Maybe you're the type who needs total silence and a pitch-black room to catch some solid Z's. Or maybe you're a night owl who thrives in the quiet hours when everyone else is asleep. Whatever your rhythm, living alone gives you the power to stick to it. No compromising because someone else is a light sleeper or insists on blasting their favorite show at midnight. No tiptoeing around in the morning because they're still snoozing. It's just you, your schedule, and a blissfully undisturbed night's rest, or early morning burst of energy. Then there's food. Your diet isn't just about what's on your plate, it's a part of how you live. Whether you've got specific nutritional goals, dietary restrictions, or just quirky preferences, sharing a kitchen with someone who doesn't get it can quickly become frustrating. Living alone means the fridge is stocked with exactly what you need. No mystery leftovers, no missing snacks, no debates over dinner plans. You can eat what you want, when you want, and how you want, without anyone commenting or complaining. But it's not just about food and sleep, it's about the whole lifestyle package. Maybe you like things a certain way, from the lighting in your living room to the way your towels are folded. Perhaps you thrive on a structured routine, or maybe you're someone who craves spontaneity and hates being tied down by someone else's schedule. Sharing a home means constant compromises, and for some people, that just doesn't feel worth it. Why spend your days negotiating over things that don't feel negotiable to you? Living alone doesn't mean you're rigid or difficult, it means you know yourself. You've spent years figuring out what works and what doesn't, and you're not interested in bending those hard-earned rules for the sake of convenience. And let's be real, there's a unique kind of peace in knowing your space will always reflect exactly who you are. No shared clutter, no competing priorities, just a home that's unapologetically yours. At the end of the day, being unwilling to compromise isn't about being selfish. It's about honoring your needs and understanding what helps you thrive. Living alone gives you the freedom to do that without guilt or tension. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, "I just wish I could do things my way," then maybe it's time to make that wish a reality. Your home, your rules, simple as that. Number 15. You don't feel the need for constant emotional connection or validation. Not everyone craves constant connection. Some people just feel at ease in their own company, thriving without the steady drip of validation from others. If that sounds like you, it might be a sign that living alone is your ideal setup. Think about it, when you don't need someone else to cheer you on or validate your choices, you free yourself from a whole lot of noise. You don't need reassurance about what you're doing, what you're wearing, or how you're living your life. You trust yourself. And that kind of self-assured independence can make shared living feel, well, unnecessary. Why share your space if you're not relying on someone else to fill an emotional gap? Living with others often comes with an unspoken expectation to engage. To check in, ask how their day went, listen when they vent, and share your own thoughts and feelings in return. For some, this emotional exchange is fulfilling, energizing, even. But for you, it might feel like an obligation rather than a genuine desire. And there's no shame in that. Knowing that you're perfectly content without constant emotional back and forth is a kind of clarity that many people never reach. Here's the thing, when you live alone, there's no pressure to show up emotionally for someone else every day. You're not expected to validate their struggles, navigate their moods, or keep up with the endless little interactions that come with sharing a home. Instead, you get to pour all of that energy back into yourself, your passions, your projects, your peace. And it's not about being cold or shutting others out. You probably still value meaningful relationships, but on your terms. You enjoy connecting when it feels right, not because you're tethered to someone else's needs or schedule. That flexibility is one of the biggest perks of living alone. You get to control when and how you engage with the world, all while maintaining the emotional space you cherish. Validation is another story entirely. If you've reached a point in life where you don't feel the need for someone else's stamp of approval, you're already ahead of the game. You know who you are, what you like, and what makes you happy, and you're not looking for anyone to confirm it for you. Living alone lets you honor that independence without compromise. You can decorate how you want, make decisions without second-guessing, and live fully in line with your own preferences. As an older adult, this kind of autonomy might feel especially liberating. You've likely spent years balancing emotional dynamics, caring for others, managing relationships, meeting expectations. Living alone is your chance to step into a space where your emotional energy is 100% yours to spend, save, or recharge however you see fit. So, if you don't need constant emotional connection or validation, why not lean into it? Living alone could be the ultimate expression of your independence and confidence. It's not about isolation, it's about living in a way that truly suits your soul. Thanks for watching. I hope these 15 signs helped you see if living alone is the right choice for you as an older person. It's all about finding your independence and living life on your own terms. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and share it with anyone who might need this advice. Until next time, take care and enjoy your journey to a more fulfilling life.